Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. And that is the executive producer, Huck, who's looking mighty spiffy right now and maybe looking a little more whiter than normal because she had a bath today. And she actually takes a bath really well. We take her down to the pet store, a little tiny one we have. They got a great little dog bath that you march her up into, and it's real convenient. And she perks up and takes on a whole new shade of white, and it takes me about 30 minutes to get her in there and get her all soaped up and rinse her off. And then they serve us, give us towels to dry her off. And she's a good dog. She takes it well, and when she comes home, she's exhausted. So anyhow, that's Huck. And that's her bath for today. Well, I hope you're doing well. And if you're expecting missing person cases today, I hate to disappoint you, but we're going to do something different. It's related to missing people, but a lot of you have said, hey Dave, don't listen to the trolls out there. And I'm not. I kind of go where my interests lie. And after coming back from Vernal, Utah, and that big conference out there for Skinwalker Ranch, and now we're just came back from the Quinault conference in Washington, it renewed my interest in a topic that we've talked about before, and that's dreams. Specifically, dreams finding missing people. It happens so many times that it astonishes me. So we're going to go through a few, and we're going to talk about some specifics on each case and how this relates to our research, because I think it does. Now, one of the things that I talked about in Quinault is reality and perception. And what is reality? Your reality may not be my reality. You look up into the stars at night, maybe you see 50, 60. But then if I give you a night vision scope and you look through that at the stars, and you'll see tens of thousands. So is your reality without the night vision or with it? And how does this all apply to what we're talking about? You're going to see in the next 3 or 4 to 10 years, there's going to be more and more talk about reality. And what is reality? And I know that many of you have heard about that maybe we're living in a game, a giant game, and somebody is controlling the game. And what do I mean by that is that there's actually a show several years ago to that exact extent. Somebody's pushing the levers and making this all happen, and we're at the whim of it. The mere thought of that is pretty striking. But when you talk about dreams, I don't care what you think, I tend to believe something somewhere somehow is imparting that into our head. Otherwise, how is it randomly happening? So I spent the last couple days going through the archives. And I'm going to start with the first case I can find on dreams, November 12th, 1885. And it happened in Idaho. It was in the Oregonian newspaper. It says a baker named Strillinor was arrested at Moscow November 7th by the sheriff from Lewiston for a murder committed on the Camas Prairie last spring. A reward of $100 for the recovery of the body was offered at the time, and Strillinor said he had a dream and would find the body for $500. The man was found as he described, his head bashed in with a stone and tied up with a handkerchief. Strillinor had no money before the disappearance, but had some afterwards. That's the first mention ever of a dream finding a body, even though this ended up in the arrest of the subject for murder. Kind of a convenient way to admit you did it, but not say you did it. There had to have been cases before this for this guy to think this up on his own. And that's why I told it to you. Now, September 7th, 1883, the Evening Post. A body found by means of a dream. Yesterday, an inquest was held at the Furnace Inn, Walton, near Chesterfield, England. Before the coroner, Mr. C.G. Busby, touching the death of William Hewitt of Boythorpe Lane in Walton, who was found drowned in the River Hipper. The deceased, who was 43 years of age, was last seen alive on Saturday night. The landlady of the Compasses Inn refused to supply him with any more drink, but he stayed at the house and subsequently shared with another man 4 pints of beer. When he started home, he was seen to be drunk. On Tuesday night, his body was found by James Watts, a collier, in a place known as the Forge Hole, where the water is about 9 feet deep. The road runs alongside the river for a short distance and is only separated from it by a wall, which at one point is not more than 18 inches high. The place was only a few yards from the deceased's home. On the coroner asking Watts why he looked for the body in the Forge Hole, he replied, quote, "Because I dreamt that the deceased was there." End of quote. The jury found that the deceased, whilst under the influence of intoxicating drink, fell into the water and was drowned. They added a recommendation to the effect that the dangerous state of the wall referred to be brought before the proper authorities so that steps might be made once taking it. Now here's the part that I want you to start thinking about as we go through these. Number one, where does this occur? Okay, this one's in England. When did it happen? September of 1883. What was the relationship between the person having the dream and the deceased? Doesn't seem to be any relationship, which I want to start focusing in on. A lot of people say, well, you must have some relationship to that body because you got the message. But that is not always the case, as is here. April 24th, 1895. Dead body found by a dream. Some extraordinary particulars were given at the inquest in Birmingham yesterday on the body of a girl named Rose Forster, found drowned in the canal. Last Wednesday, she left home ostensibly to visit an aunt. She did not return, and the affair was reported to the police, who were helped by an aunt of the deceased, who related to them a strange dream. On hearing of the disappearance of her niece, she dreamt that while passing the canal at Spring Hill, she rippled in the water with her umbrella, and the body of the deceased at once floated to the surface. She visited the spot the following morning, and finding the police dragging the canal in another part, suggested that they should transfer operations to the part she had the dream. They did so and immediately recovered the body. Okay, young girl, didn't say the age, but she was going to see this woman, her aunt. Important point. Relationship strong, very strong. A young person. Aunt had an idea where she might be found. So, I think we can almost all agree that the body has a soul. Many people have stated over the years that, Dave, maybe the missing 411 cases involved some entity needing our soul. I think that's an interesting angle. Now, there's many people that think if we die, the soul continues on and lives. And it gets essentially recycled. Some people believe that before we, as a human, come back to Earth, we're sat down and we're given options based on how we lived our prior life. If we lived a life of goodwill we furthered the race, we were good people, then we can come back at a higher level, more prominent person, somebody has more determination in the way the world goes, etc. Let's say that you're a murderer, a robber, a rapist. Well, maybe you're going to come back like an ant. I've got told this so many times. I'm not saying this is the way. I'm giving you some statements that people have made. So just hold your taters. Don't flip out. I want you to listen. Other people have said, well, if you haven't been a really bad person, then maybe you come back as a mammal, like a deer or an elk. And then if you come back maybe as a bald eagle, that seems to be a pretty good life. It wouldn't be bad. But there's certain things with humans that only humans have. Time and space are only applicable to humans. I mean, if I tell you to be somewhere at 9:15, a deer, an antelope, a rodent, doesn't mean anything to them. They may understand seasons, but they don't understand time and space. And then there's language. Verbs, nouns, spelling. All these things apply to humans. So before I go too far down that rabbit hole, I'm kind of trying to lay the groundwork for you for reality. And do we ultimately have control of our own destiny, or is somebody putting roadblocks in front of us as we lead our life? Think about that one. Now, a lot of people believe, well, you live according to the Ten Commandments, or you live according to the Bill of Rights, or you live according to the goodwill listed in your church Bible, whatever one you follow. Thou shalt not. And then the hope is that we get entered through the pearly gates and we're accepted. But let's talk about those obstacles. I mean, a lot of us, as we grow older, we're going to get disease, cancer. But what about the ability to fight that off? Is it internal? Is it external? Does somebody grant us that? Is it because we lived a clean life that we can fight it off? Good questions, right? But then the obstacles that are placed in front of us. Example, Ben dying. That absolutely shut down my world for 2 years. I may have seemed like I was functioning, but I wasn't really functioning. I'm just now starting to a little bit feel like I'm somewhat balanced, but that was a huge blow. And then look at Ben. If it's true that we're given options when we come back to Earth, some people say, well, you can see a screenshot of your life go in front of you for, I don't know, a million miles an hour for 3 minutes, and you get to see what your life's going to look like. You choose to go or you choose not to go. Seems like an unusual thing to do. Now, this squirrel, Rose Forster, found in a canal. And when we went through this, why these bodies died associated with water? And we weren't looking for them. That's just the way it was. So keep thinking about that. Baltimore Sun, September 15th, 1903. A man's vision about a missing woman proves true. Greenfield, Mass. Led by a vision, a searching party yesterday found the body of Mary Kelleher, who has been missing since August 25th. John J. Woodlock announced that he had a dream in which he saw Miss Kelleher's body lying at the bottom of the Green River near the West Deerfield line. He related that the dream several times he had had, and his friends finally suggested that the place be searched. After an invitation by Reverend Father Carroll in the church in the morning, 25 followers joined them on the hunt. They went to the river and finally dragged the body out of the sandbar 6 feet below the surface. The body showed no marks of violence, though features were unrecognizable. Water. And this was church related. 25 followers of the church went with them and found the body. So, was this an orchestrated event by a higher source? And then why would some people disappear, never be found, and no messages about the body ever come, and other people get a dream and then they go find the body? Is there some importance to finding that body? March 23rd, 1907. Schenectady. A special to the Gazette from Troy says, a curious dream revelation occurred Thursday in Hoosick Falls and resulted in the finding of the body of Thomas Nolan, a Boston and Maine bridge inspector who fell off the bridge at North Hoosac last Friday and was drowned. A vain search was made for him. George Stemp of Hoosick Falls taking an active part in the search. Mr. Stemp Wednesday night went to sleep thinking all of the possible places where the body might be found. Then he dreamed, and in his dream he thought he saw the body lying in a hole off Hathaway Point about a mile below the bridge where Nolan was drowned. Thursday he went to the spot and after grappling about for a while found the corpse, which Coroner Hutton, who was called, directed to and removed to Nolan's home in Mechanicsville. So why this man? This is in New York, 1907, March. Water. So this man, no relationship to the deceased. Keep score. This is important. November 29th, 1907, Dakota County Herald. Body found shortly after child was born, buried in quicklime. The police in Oakland, California, unearthed a diabolical crime and have taken into custody M.A. Wilkins, a stationary engineer, whom they charged with the murder of his wife. Her remains were found buried in quicklime underneath a shed in the yard of the Wilkins home. Mrs. Wilkins had not been seen around her home for several days. She gave birth to a child, and inquiries elicited the response that she had gone to the home of her parents in the East. A friend of the dead woman, Mrs. J.M. Anderson of San Francisco, had been staying with the Wilkins home the past few days, now asserts that Wilkins endeavored to induce her to leave her husband and go away with him, and her suspicions became aroused. Monday night, in a dream, she saw the body of her former friend lying on the ground with arms crossed over her breast. She came to San Francisco and told her husband that the two went to the chief of police at Oakland and told the story. The case was given to the hands of the sheriff, who went to the home of the Wilkins and found the body in a trench under an old carpet. It was lying just as described by Mrs. Anderson, with the hands folded across the breast. Let's think about this. However that body was put there, if it was put there with the hands across the chest, who saw it? Who saw it to tell this person in a dream? And I tend to think of the weird stuff. What angle was this vision from? Was this up above looking down at the feet, looking at the head, from the head looking at the feet? And then how was that transmitted to the person who reported it? See how this all gets convoluted if you really think about it? And then how can the description of the body be so accurate to the person remembering the dreams. Remember your last dream? Mine are kind of vague. I mean, there's a lot of specific detail. Sometimes, but it's rare. But these have specific detail. Little girl's dream, November 15th, 1909, reveals hidden body of boy 11 days dead in a chimney. New York, Frank DeRosa, the 5-year-old boy who has been missing from his home in the Bronx for 11 days, was found yesterday in a chimney of the tenement at North 322 East 63rd Street. He was dead, and according to coroner Harmberger, he had been so since November 4th when he was last seen. The police and coroner are working on the theory that he was strangled, for marks are discernible on his neck, and the statement of Frank's brother that a man took him away causes them to be suspicious. An autopsy will be performed today and definitely determine the cause of death. The startling feature of the discovery of the body was a dream that 15-year-old Mary Laperto of Washington Avenue had during the early hours Sunday morning. This was that little Frank was in a chimney at the 63rd Street address, and she told it to the frantic mother. A hook and ladder company was summoned and the chimney torn open from the top floor apartment and the body taken out. Frank is one of 3 sons of Mr. and Mrs. DeRosa. The family has many relatives in the Italian colony on East 63rd, and on Monday the mother took the children to see their grandmother and a cousin on North 329 East 63rd. When Mrs. DeRosa and the grandmother returned, they met Philip, age 3, playing in the hall. He was asked where Frank was. He said, "Big man took him to roof," was the answer. Again, location, a city environment in New York. Relationship, none known, other than a young girl, 15 years old, had a dream about a young boy. Now, if you were the Almighty Spirit and you were concerned about mentally injuring a young person, giving them this dream and knowing later in life that your dream found a young boy deceased, that may play on you. But why that girl? Why not the mom? Warren Times Mirror, June 24th, 1910. Remains of Charles O'Byron drowned in River Canal recovered. Connellsville, Pennsylvania. A dream led to the recovery of the body of Charles O'Byron of Wheeler, drowned in the Youghiogheny during the flood of last Sunday. Mrs. John Wesock, who lives near Wheeler, last Monday night saw in her dreams the hand of the child protruding above the surface of the river and the body covered with mud. In the evening, she went to the river bank and told of her dream to Tom Yarnell, who was on his way to fish. Yarnell started out to search the place directed by the dream, wading out to a spot near where Lunbar Creek empties into the Youghiogheny. The first object he saw was the hand, just visible above the water. The body was recovered. The boy was 10 years old, and he fell in the river while attempting to catch driftwood. Very specific. Remember what I told you. Hand out of the water. Not, they're kind of in this area. This is specific. Why? Pennsylvania's the location. Why? Year 1910. Relationship, none known. January 11th, 1912. Remains of 14-year-old boy drowned in Wallaceburg, Ontario, found. Following the statement of a dream of Mrs. Scott of this town, the body of Harold Comer, 14 years of age, son of Samuel Comer, and who broke through the ice on the Sydenham River here to his death, the citizens located the remains of the lad, as predicted, between Dunlop's and the Gilt Edge Bakery plants. The discovery was made directly opposite of the place where the Port Huron diver had made a diligent search for the body. The lifeless form was encased in a solid piece of ice and was lying extended at full length. The ice was cut away from the body, which was removed to the home of the grief-stricken parents. The discovery was made directly opposite of the place where the divers thought that he'd be, but the dream found the body. Mrs. Scott had the dream of a boy 14 years old in water. Friends, I swear to you, I'm being honest, I'm not looking for these cases in water. I'm just finding dream cases. Passaic, New Jersey, April 7th, 1914. A psychic phenomenon was registered here today when the body of a daughter-in-law of Mrs. Julia Davis was discovered after a week's futile search in an abandoned well where a dream of the elderly woman had pictured it. Mrs. Davis, who was 80 years old, had been brooding since last Sunday on the disappearance of the wife of her son, Louis. A vivid dream last night which preyed upon her mind all day led to the mother to the well, and therein she saw the body. It is thought that the young woman committed suicide. Connection strong. It's her daughter-in-law. Water, well. I always ask this. Did the soul of the woman who's deceased tell this woman? Now this was maybe a suicide. So did the body want to be found? Remember we talked about a woman's body up in the Colorado mountains, and the searcher said he was told in a dream that women had to find the body. Here, a woman found a woman's body. Is that just coincidence? I don't know. July 2nd, 1915, Humboldt, Kansas. Dream reveals body of victim of Neosho flood. The body of Fred Norton, who was drowned by the upsetting of a boat in the Neosho River, was found a mile down the river by Mrs. J.H. Shields. In a dream, Mrs. Shields thought that she had found the body in one of two places. So vivid was her dream that when she awoke in the morning, she went to the river and found the body in the first place she visited. The boy's arm was caught in a cable which extends into the river. The falling water level going down, left it exposed. Young boy in river, no relationship, in Kansas. 1915. January 17th, 1918. A week ago, Patrick Walsh left his home in Wesleyville to go to work, and his disappearance baffled police and authorities. 2 nights after he disappeared, the 17-year-old daughter, Evelyn, dreamed that he had been struck by a nickel plate train and that his body had been tossed near the Water Street crossing in Wesleyville. State police and county officials searched the tracks without result, until the girl insisted that they examine the spot she saw in her dream. They dug beneath the snow and found the hand thrust upward in that spot. A few feet more and they found the body. C.M. Cardo, county coroner, inspected the body and determined he had been hit by a train and no inquest was necessary. Relationship strong. This was on the P&E Railroad. Was it a suicide? They don't know. Location, Wesleyville. Covered by snow. Snow is water. Twice repeated vision, Michigan contractor leads to discovery. Spring Lake, Michigan. The dream, twice repeated to George Snyder, a local contractor, led late yesterday to the discovery of the bodies of Harry Proctor, 33 years old, a Muskegon real estate dealer, and 14-year-old Edna Fooliger, buried in the mud of the Grand River 3 blocks from the Proctor home. The man and girl had been missing since October 30th, and it's now December 11th. Impressed by his dreams, Snyder communicated with officials and made a sketch of the place where the automobile in which the two were last seen might be found. 30 minutes after officers began to drag the river, the car was found, and the bodies of the two, for whom a nationwide search had been made, were recovered shortly thereafter. Proctor, according to reports to officials, called at the Paulides home the night of October 20th. He said he had been drinking and was afraid to drive his car, and the Paulides girl finally consented to drive him home. This was the last they had seen of them. Later, a warrant charging for abduction was obtained for Mr. Paulides against Proctor. The point here, two people found in a river in Michigan. Now remember, Pennsylvania, lots of disappearances. Michigan, lots of disappearances. January 8th, 1928, North Bend, Oregon. A beautiful place if you've never been there. Absolutely stunning. One of my favorite cities is Bend. Floating under a dock where it had rested since November. Again, the date of this article, January 8th, 1928. Since November, the body of Dennis Webb of Abilene, Texas, was found today by Rudy Whitlock, North Bend boy, who said he was led to the spot by a dream he had last night in which the location of the body was revealed to him. He went to the dock and found Webb's body in the place he believed it would be found, but saw nothing of the body of Mrs. Webb, who drowned with her husband when their automobile plunged off the end of a blind street here in Coos Bay. It is believed Webb lost his way in a dense fog. It was hoped tonight that the body of Mrs. Webb would be found within a day or two. Just for clarification, Bend is different than North Bend. Coos Bay is on the coast. Here a family goes into the water. All of them are deceased, not been found, except this one boy is found by another boy. So two boys communicating with each other, if that's the case. But why tell this young boy? Why play head games for the rest of his life? Why would whoever the spirit is or the entity is, why tell that young boy? July 11th, 1930. Mother's dream reveals son's body in a morgue. The dream of Mrs. Albert F. Ewell of 211 Moy Street, that the body of her stepson, missing for 3 weeks, lay in the county morgue, became a reality when her husband found the body there. Oscar Ewell, 25, was killed June 15th when an allegedly stolen automobile he was driving collided with another car on a Brownsville road near Brentwood Municipal Building. Ewell suffered injuries which caused his death a short time later. The body was removed to the morgue where it lay unidentified till last night. Connection strong. It's her stepson, but not her blood relative. Found in a morgue. This is 1930. The majority of the disappearances I found were from 1880 to about 1932, and then they abruptly slowed down or stopped. This is September 22nd, 1931. Mother's vision 3 times repeated leads father to the right spot. Rainier, Oregon. To a bereaved mother's dream last Friday night is credited with the discovery on Saturday morning of the body of Victor Tier, 18-year-old high school youth who lost his life in the Columbia River the night of September 12th. Tier was one of 3 of a crew on a fishing boat, Mayday, which was struck by the steamer Florence Luckenbach. The 2 other were R&R Edwards and Bob Segerson, were saved. 3 times during the night Friday, Mrs. Tier, so Friday, if you guys are into dates, the date of this article was September 21st. Friday would have been September 18th when she had the dream. She's awakened each time with the intuitive impression that the body of her son would be found on Salmon Beach. the place about a quarter mile below the Columbia River Bridge where the Mayday was beached after the collision by the tugboat Nadine. She urged Mr. Tier, who with fishermen had dragged the river vainly for several days after the tragedy, to look at Salmon Beach the next day. He did so, and before noon on Saturday found the body among the driftwood on the beach and near the home of an uncle of the dead youth. On the beach and near the home of an uncle of the dead youth. Coincidence? So, why do some people have one dream? Some people have 3 dreams. May 12, 1934, Steep Rock, Manitoba. Guided unerringly by instructions which came to him in a dream, Stony Vigfuson Friday found the body of his mother on the storm-wrecked beach of Lake Manitoba. Just before noon, the 35-year-old son fell into a fitful sleep. He dreamed, then he jumped up from his cot, raced out the door, and a mile down the beach, there lay the body of his mother, missing more than a week. Stoney disclosed words seemed to come to him from nowhere, telling him, quote, "Go to the beach. There's a letter for you." The words were repeated as he dreamed. Memories of his dream faded, but the message was easily recalled. Mrs. Vigfuson is believed to have drowned when returning home a week ago. No suspicion of foul play has been raised. She had $36 with her when she disappeared and had $36 on her when she was found. Relationship close. Her son. Water. And the last one I could find. December 16th, 1979. Radford, North Carolina. A woman's long-suppressed horror at seeing her father's body stuffed in the family outhouse 35 years ago led to the uncovering of his remains and the suicide of her mother. The case began April 8th, 1944 in the tawny crossroads community of Timberland in Robeson County, when the wife of Edward Leon Cameron, 34, reported the prominent farmer had disappeared. It ended Friday with the suicide of his wife while state medical examiners were going over his hacked-up remains found in the family's farm. Winnie McNeil Cameron left a murder confession behind. Mrs. Cameron, 89, had been thought of as a kind, quiet, hard-working woman who raised her 3 children alone through rough times after her husband disappeared. She went to church, was prominent in civic affairs, Red Cross blood bank volunteer. She divorced her husband in 1954 on grounds of separation for more than 2 years. One of her children, Annie Blueberry, now of Orlando, Florida, came to authorities about visions that had been haunting her recently. On Easter morning, April 9th, 1944, Mrs. Perry saw her mother in the kitchen, and the sink was full of pots and pans and bloody water. Said a search warrant obtained by Hope County authorities last week. Mrs. Perry then asked her mother where her father was, and her mother said he had left, the warrant said. Later that day, Mrs. Perry went into an unused room and saw her father's body wrapped on the floor. He was nude except for gauze wrapped around his hips. After going to bed that night, Mrs. Perry recalled hearing butchering sounds and got up to see a large cardboard box filled on the back porch. The Fayetteville Observer reported Saturday that another person was involved in disposing of the body. Mrs. Perry, who now teaches at the Valencia Community College in Florida, was 10 years old when her father disappeared. She was staying Saturday with a sister. After telling a Florida psychiatrist about her visions, she returned to Hope County and directed law enforcement officers to the site. She was hypnotized in connection with the investigation. Authorities found human bones at the site. Dr. John Butts, Deputy State Chief Medical Examiner, said an analysis indicated the body had been chopped up. Relationship. Super strong. So that. So what do we learn by this? The vast majority of these cases are water related. That's number one. But really, I hope we have a healthy discussion on this video on the comments section. I want to hear from you guys what you think about this. And don't be afraid to comment on other people's thoughts. Be polite. But this is meant to get you to think, because there's obviously a lot more to our world than we understand. Lastly, always before the holidays, I make a special offer. Here it is. You buy 2 Missing 411 books, any 2 you want, and you get this hat for free. You don't have to do anything, just buy the 2 books. We'll throw the hat in when we see a 2-book order come through. Minimum of 2 books. If you buy 3 or 4, great. You only get 1 hat. But please buy. Christmas season, I want to see everybody wearing one of these hats. In Washington, there were a ton of people wearing the hat. So thanks. It's getting around. Liberty, one of the most important words in your vocabulary. Thanks for being here. Be safe. Be kind to others during the holiday season. Paulides out.